Another season of football is approaching the people in Lexington, Kentucky, and for Mark Stoops' Kentucky Wildcats, well, it just feels like another year in which Kentucky is sitting towards the middle of the pack in the SEC. Not at the bottom, not at the top, somewhere leveling out in the middle. But if we know one thing about Kentucky football, it's that you can never count out Mark Stoops' team. Can Kentucky be more than just a middle of the pack team and a potential SEC sleeper in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to prediction season, whether it's the first video you're mine or what video is this, the 35th one. If you've caught up with predictions from now, I'm predicting every single team in the country. That's all 134 FBS level teams, and it means I'm doing your favorite one. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. I want to thank you so much for watching this video because it helps support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. And if you would like to continue to support what I do here on YouTube, please like, comment, share, watch my other videos, do anything else you can to help support the channel. It does mean a lot to me. And we're going to dive on into talking about Kentucky football in 2024. How do we do that? We're going to take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the day, we will go through the schedule for Kentucky, give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. A couple more things before we do start. Right over here in this column are going to be the stats the team either offensively or defensively put up last season. And for your viewing pleasure, of course, dear viewer, right below the team's logo, I've put the team's coaching staff. The offense in 2023 for the Kentucky Wildcats was underwhelming to say the least. It just felt like this was a team built to produce a little more than what they actually did offensively, and 29 points per game sure might be a pretty solid number. I'm talking about that yardage. Only 340 yards per game. There definitely felt like It just definitely felt like this is the Kentucky offense that could have done a little bit more, at least in my opinion, and it does lose a very valuable player in each key position to the transfer portal, to the NFL. We'll talk all about it. Got to start with the most important position. That is the quarterback room, and Devin Leary is gone. The former NC State transfer had a little bit of a disappointing 2022. When you go ahead and take a look at what he did in 2022 compared to 2023, his 2023 definitely was a lot better. 2,746 yards, 25 touchdowns, but the kickers are here. 12 interceptions and only 56% completion percentage. There was a lot of good. There was some not so good, but overall, Devin Leary, a really solid quarterback, and obviously it showed. He's now going to go play on Sundays. You also do lose a lot of guys through the transfer portal. Kaya Sharon was the primary backup last year, only threw 4 passes, but nonetheless was the primary backup. And then some depth pieces in the quarterback room, such as Destin Wade and Deuce Hogan, are also finding new homes through the transfer portal. So this is a really revamped quarterback room. You do have a freshman coming in Cutter Boley, but he's expected to play second fiddle to the 3 guys that you're going to see here. Brock Vandegrift is coming over from Georgia. He's expected to be that starting quarterback here in Lexington and got some fair amount of playing time at Georgia. He threw 18 passes last year, completed 12 of them, 165 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was while sitting behind Carson Beck. Was with Georgia for 2021, 2022. Again, got the most playing time he ever had in his career last season. Now entering 2024, Vandegrift looks to make a big impact with this Kentucky offense. You also do get Bo Allen, who is a transfer coming over from Georgia Southern. And who knows, maybe even he could make a push for the starting quarterback position as well. 2,836 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions as the starting Georgia Southern quarterback last season. You also are getting Gavin Wimsaw over from Rutgers to make for what's a really interesting quarterback room. My money would be on Vandegrift, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Allen get a couple starts here and there, maybe even being the primary starter. And you know they're going to utilize Gavin Wimsaw. He's a very athletic player that, again, doesn't have great passing ability, but they can definitely utilize his legs. In the running back room, you do lose Ray Davis. He, much like Devin Leary, will also be playing on Sundays. Ray Davis, the former Vanderbilt transfer, 199 yards, 199 carries, my apologies, 1,129 yards and 14 rushing touchdowns, average 5.7 yards per carry. Very talented player. You lose him, as well as Juton McClain to the transfer portal, and Ramon Jefferson, who was your second leading rusher last year with 184 yards, is also gone. He has run out of eligibility. He has graduated. So who do you return in this running back room? Well, Demi Sumo Karnbaye is going to be coming back. Jamarian Wilcox will also be returning to this running back room. Wilcox did not get a carry last year, but who knows, could play a pretty important role in this running back room in 2024. You get a guy in from the transfer portal. Chip Trayanum has moved closer to home. The former Ohio State running back has moved over now to play for the Kentucky Wildcats, and a couple freshmen such as Jason Patterson and Tovani Mizell that also could play some pretty big parts to this running back room. Going to be really hard to try to fill in for Ray Davis, but you do have some talent there. Wide receiver room, you lose Tavion Robinson, your second leading receiver last year, arguably your most talented, 41 catches for 552 yards and 4 touchdowns. You also do lose Shamar Porter to the transfer, or you also do lose Shamar Portal to the transfer portal, and then Isaiah Cummings out of the tight end room is also gone through the transfer portal as well, had 4 catches for 98 yards last season. So your pass catching room, well, Dane Key and Barry and Brown, two very talented guys in this room, they both come back. 636 yards, 6 touchdowns for Key, 539 yards, 4 touchdowns for Brown. Need I mention that Ray Davis was the 4th leading receiver on this team, so Key and Brown come back, and then it's up to a lot of pieces from the portal, as well as Anthony Brown-Stevens to play a bigger role. You get Fred Ferrier and Jamori Macklin coming in through the transfer portal. Macklin is a transfer coming in from North Texas, and then Ferrier comes over from UAB. And then the tight end room, Josh Caddis comes back, as well as Jordan Dingle and Kamari Anderson. And with Jeremy Flax off to the NFL out of the offensive line room, your offensive line looks like this: Marquez Cox, Dylan Ray, Eli Cox, Jager Burton, and Cortland Ford all return, while Gerald Mincy and Jalen Farmer come in through the portal. Mincy by way of Tennessee and Farmer by way of the Florida Gators. So this makes for a pretty interesting offensive team in 2024. Again, who's going to end up being that primary starter? I would lead towards Vandegrift, but Bo Allen maybe is definitely a little bit more proven at the quarterback position due to throwing for 2,800 yards last season. How do you replace Ray Davis? You have some pieces in the wide receiver room in Key and Brown that are going to be really good for this team, as they were last season. Probably most definitely going to end up being your top 2 targets. They were pretty similar in catches and yards last season, as you heard me just read. So this is definitely going to be an interesting offensive team to watch. I think it is up to the quarterback play, right? What are you going to get from Brock Vandegrift? What are you going to get from Bo Allen? And can the offensive line stay consistent, maybe even improve a little bit? They gave up 22 sacks last year. We'll see which way that number slides, whether it's up or down or remains relatively the same. But we got to talk about now the Kentucky defense in 2024. And well, they really don't lose a lot at all. It was a pretty good rush defense, a pass defense that definitely ended up seeing its hiccups, and it just wasn't a great defense on third down. But overall, Mark Stoops is returning a lot of defensive talent. We're just going to run through all of their losses here right now, because there really aren't that many notable losses. Keaton Wade does leave off of the defensive line. He was more of an edge type rusher, but I went ahead and put him on the defensive line here, as I personally count edge rushers as a defensive lineman. Last season, 36 tackles and a sack. Last season, he could play defensive line. He could play linebacker. He has found a new home through the portal. Trevin Wallace was your second leading tackler last year at 80 of them, 5.5 sacks. He's gone out of the linebacker room, as well as some depth pieces in Martez Thrower and Luke Fulton. You do lose Andrew Phillips to the NFL, so he is going to be leaving off of this team. You could call him Drew Phillips there as well. But Phillips last season, 48 tackles and 5 passes defended there for this team. You also do lose Jalen Geiger. He is leaving through the transfer portal, a piece that had 9 tackles out of the cornerback room last year. No losses in the secondary otherwise. I'm talking about the safety position, and no losses on special teams, because kickers are people too, and we got to show them some love. So let's talk about what this defense returns, because it is a whole bunch of talent. Dion Walker, Josiah Hayes, Trayvon Rybka, Octavius Oxendine, I probably butchered that name, so I apologize, and Khalil Saunders all return to this defensive line. Walker last season was the leader of them, will be again in 2024. 55 tackles, 7.5 sacks last season, but it doesn't stop there. You return your leading tackler from last year in the linebacker room, and De'Eric Jackson, 89 tackles, 2 sacks. The guy who was second on your team in sacks, and J.J. Weaver, was a top 10 tackler with 45 of them and 7 sacks last season. You also are returning Daverin Rayner, as well as getting Jamon Dumas Johnson coming in from the transfer portal, a very talented linebacker who comes over from Georgia. He's a 4-star transfer and is absolutely going to play big minutes alongside De'Eric Jackson and J.J. Weaver in this linebacker room. You take a look at the cornerback room. And what do you know? It returns a lot of talent here as well. Maxwell Hairston, who had 66 tackles, led the team with 6 passes defended, and had 5 interceptions last season. He comes back. John Keese Hardaway and Jansen Dunn will also return, while DJ Waller is a transfer that comes over from the national champion last season. That's Michigan. And then you take a look at your safety room. Zion Childress, Alex Afari, Jordan Lovett, and Ty Bryant all return, while Kristen Story is a transfer coming over from the Alabama Crimson Tide. And again, kickers are people too. You return your punter, Wilson Berry. You return your kicker, Alex Raynor. This defense is providing all the makings for a defense that could be really, really good in 2024. Again, you take a look at the returning talent. Yes, Wade is a pretty notable loss on the defensive line. Yes, you're going to be losing Wallace in the linebacker room. Yes, Drew Phillips is definitely a pretty substantial loss in the cornerback room as well. But other than that, I mean, everyone comes back on the defensive side for Kentucky in 2024. Again, was a defense that was pretty good last year, especially up front, and now with the addition of Jamon Dumas Johnson, I have a feeling that defensive front is going to be even better. They're going to be able to pressure the quarterback a little bit better. That rush defense should see an uptick as well. The defensive back room is the question mark for this defense. That's also where a lot of their problems on third down come in. When you force a team into a third and long, such as like a 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, they could be able to beat that secondary. So the secondary has to take a step in the right direction, but it has a lot of talent. Hairston, Hardaway, Dunn. You do get some nice pieces from the portal in Waller and Story. Childress, Safari, and Lovett are also all great returning players. And look, this has all the makings to be a really good defense in 2024. Can that secondary take a step up? That's what I'm looking for. I have no doubt the defensive front is going to be really, really good. It's time for that secondary to take a step up. And you're looking at potentially one of the SEC's better defensive units in 2024, just based on the sheer talent that is here. Now we will dive on into the schedule for the Kentucky Wildcats, and it looks like this. Any game at home will be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics. Guys, that's that slanted text. Any game in green is a game that I think the Wildcats are going to be able to win fairly easily, while any game in yellow is a game that, okay, you know, the other team is going to put up a fight, but Kentucky will walk away with the win. In red is any predicted loss. A tough schedule awaits Kentucky in 2024, but it will be starting off with a win against the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, a team that just didn't end up being that great last season, and you do lose a lot of talented players, most notably the running back in Frank Gore Jr., of course, the son of an NFL legend in Frank Gore. Southern Miss will not be any sort of competitive for Kentucky this season, so Kentucky will be able to win that game, and I think they'll be able to win in week 2 as well. South Carolina's losing a lot of talented pieces last year. Spencer Rattler is gone. You lose a lot of pieces through the portal, both offensively and defensively, and I just have a feeling South Carolina's going to be in for a pretty disappointing 2024 season, so the Gamecocks will be going down to the Wildcats, not without a fight. I think the Gamecocks still got some good pieces to compete, and as the Kentucky secondary starts to figure some things out here, I think South Carolina will be able to put up a fight, but the Wildcats walk away victorious. Then you enter a week 3 game against Georgia. Now, it is a home game, but I just don't see you beating the Georgia Bulldogs. Carson Beck and that offense are extremely talented, and for how good the Kentucky defense potentially can be in 2024, I have a feeling they're going to be really, really good. Georgia is also a very, very good defense, and I like the pieces they have offensively a lot more than what Kentucky has in 2024. I think Carson Beck is due for a big year, and the Bulldogs beat the Wildcats on the road to hand Kentucky their first loss of 2024. Then you go ahead and enter week 4 against the Ohio Bobcats. I think you win this one as well. A lot of talented pieces leaving that team, either through the portal, or actually, I should say most pieces are leaving through the portal. I believe you lost your starting quarterback, some really good pieces at running back, some pretty darn solid defensive pieces. Who knows what Ohio's going to look like in the MAC this year, but I do know one thing. Kentucky will be beating them in week 4. Then you have to go on the road and play the Ole Miss Rebels, and I don't know about you guys, but I really like Lane Kiffin's team. Jackson Dart is coming back, and even though you lose Quinshon Judkins, you've been able to fill in that gap really well with bringing in some pieces in the running back room. And then when you go ahead and look at the wide receiver room, it's loaded. You also get Juice Wells coming over from South Carolina. And look, this is just overall going to be a very good Ole Miss team. I also expect their defense to take a step up in the right direction. So for the Ole Miss Rebels in 2024, I see a win against the Kentucky Wildcats, leaving the Wildcats to now fall to 3-2. So after the loss to the Ole Miss Rebels, again, I think Lane Kiffin's squad is going to be very good this year, very high-octane offense. The defense will improve. I know I kind of jumbled my thoughts around a lot during that one, but I think Ole Miss is going to be a really talented team this year. I do think Kentucky, after their first bye week of the 2024 season, yes, you get two this year, they will be able to beat the Vanderbilt Commodores. I just don't think Vanderbilt, again, much like every other year, going to be up to the level of competition in the SEC. Then you have to go on the road and play the Florida Gators. And the Gators have a very tough schedule, and they are losing a lot of pieces. They are losing a lot through the transfer portal. There are some pieces that are going off to the NFL as well. Most notably, Trevor Etienne is gone. Ricky Pearsall is off to the league. You lose a lot of defensive pieces, but Graham Mertz is back. There are some very talented transfers coming in, and Florida's going to be very competitive in 2024, and I think they sneak up on Kentucky here. Kentucky's got to go on the road to play in the Swamp, and I think Florida's going to be able to pull off that win. So after Week 8, Kentucky is looking at 4-3, and I do think you fall to 4-4 at home here. Love what Hugh Freeze is doing at Auburn. That program is building up in the right direction. Got some good defensive pieces, got some good offensive pieces as well. Now, is that quarterback play going to be better than it was last season? Because we know Auburn's got talent running the football with Jarquez Hunter coming back, but Peyton Thorne was not his Michigan State self last season. If that can take a step up, if the offensive line can take a step up, Auburn is going to be really good here, and I think that's going to be able to happen in this game. Now, I know Kentucky's a really good defensive team, but again, that secondary is where things struggled. If Auburn sees a little jump in that passing game, in fact, if Auburn sees a big jump in that passing game, which I believe there will be fairly substantial increase in the passing offense for Auburn this season, got some good wide receivers over there, I think they're going to be able to come on the road here in Lexington and pull off a win. I think Auburn gets at least one pretty big road win this year. It happens to be against Kentucky for me, and Kentucky falls down to 500. I also do believe that you will not be able to beat Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava on the road. Now, the Volunteers definitely do have some defensive questions, even though they have one of the best defensive players in the country in James Pierce. He could be a guy that at the end of the season, once everything is all said and done, next April, be the number one pick in the NFL draft. There's some real buzz surrounding that, but Nico Iamaleava is going to be a stud. And again, where's this Kentucky defense weak? It's secondary. While that's going to improve in 2024, I've hammered that point home many times. Nico Iamaleava has some very talented pass catchers, some great returning weapons around him. The defense, I believe, will get at least a little bit better, and the Volunteers will be beating the Wildcats, sending them to 4-5, but the Wildcats will get right back to 500 after their bye week with a win over an FCS program in the Murray State Racers. Before you got to win at least one of these two next games to make a bowl game, at least in my estimate as of right now, and I don't see you beating the Texas Longhorns on the road. Texas is way too talented this year, especially if they can fill gaps in on that defensive line. You're looking at one of college football's elite level teams for 2024. Quinn Ewers is back. He's got a lot of pieces in at wide receiver. The defensive back seven should be really, really good for Texas. And you're looking at one of the four teams that a lot of people are talking about to go win a national championship, pairing them along with another team on Kentucky's schedule in Georgia and two teams out of the Big Ten in Ohio State and Oregon. Texas is going to be really good this year, and especially with Kentucky going on the road, I don't see them beating Steve Sarkisian's squad, but I do see them beating Louisville at home. Kentucky has dominated this rivalry since it seems like the beginning of time. Louisville just hasn't been able to string together a performance to be able to beat Kentucky, even though Louisville was a really good team last season. Louisville's losing Jack Plummer. There are some pieces leaving, but they're still going to have a great pass rush, still going to have a great rush defense, a really good defensive-sided team. But I do think that Kentucky, with just needing this win to make a bowl game, they have a lot of good defensive talent, again, especially on that defensive front. I think they're going to be able to slow down Louisville's offense. I think Kentucky will be able to win that game. So I have Kentucky at 6-6. Disappointing for Wildcat fans, yes. But hear me out. I think Kentucky is a little bit better than a 6-6 team. Maybe they can get that road win against Florida. Maybe they beat the Auburn Tigers. Just not the way it ended up shaking out for me. I have them going to 6-6, but you're able to pull off some pretty good wins. I mean, South Carolina, I don't think it's going to be a pushover this year. Louisville is a team that, again, is going to be one of the better better teams in the ACC this year. I just see Kentucky just getting into a bowl game. They got a lot of tough games here, but this is a team that, again, if they can fill pieces in offensively, the defensive front will still be good. If the secondary can improve, you could be looking at a better record than 6-6. Let's see if they can prove me wrong. What do you think about the Wildcats? Let me know in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and we'll talk about the UCF Knights coming up next. Goodbye.